Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, February 24th, if you are just tuning in. We just finished going over the situation with the Rams and Matthew Stafford potentially on the trade block. In this segment, we turn our attention over to an off-season preview. What would a dream off-season look like for the San Francisco 49ers? But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports, anything that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, February 24th. But like I was saying, we're going to get a little bit into what a dream offseason might look like for the San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers are in a very interesting spot right now as we speak, right? This was a team that went 6-11 last year, finished last place in their division, of course, missing the playoffs. But this is also a team that made the Super Bowl, went to overtime against a Chiefs dynasty, and just lost in overtime to that team just 2 years ago. Now, the story of their season last year was, of course, injuries. It was a messy and loud offseason. One of the worst off seasons I've seen in a very long time, just because the drama that went all around this team just would not stop. It started and ended really with Brandon Ayuk, whose negotiations took the entire offseason. He asked for a trade, then said he didn't want a trade, agreed to a contract, agreed to a trade, didn't agree to a trade, and then eventually decided to sign a massive contract. Now, all of that was null and void because Brandon Ayuk got hurt and missed most of this season. And he wasn't the only one. Trent Williams, probably the most important football player on this team. Christian McCaffrey, a close second. Dre Greenlaw missed some time. Javon Hargrave missed a bunch of time. Every single one of their running backs that looked like they were ever going to do something got hurt yet again, as Kyle Shanahan running backs tend to do. Jordan Mason had a strong start to the season before getting hurt. Elijah Mitchell came in for a little bit, then got hurt. You had even the rookie, Ricky Pearsall, get hurt in the beginning of the season, come in a little bit later. This is a team that desperately needed a break from the injury bug. It wasn't that it was a million injuries. It was just a bunch of deep cuts and deep wounds. And even with that, this is a team that still looked solid at times, right? The offensive line could have been better, but that's, again, without your stalwart tackle, Trent Williams, it's tough to do. The offense could have been better in the red zone. That would have been really important, but you didn't have your big red zone weapon in Christian McCaffrey, and that hurts this offense a lot. And that's where the big issue was in the red zone, right? They could not convert in the red zone. They were able to move the ball up and down the field, but at the end of the day, when you can't punch it in for 6, it's going to hurt your overall record. Right now, they head into this offseason projected around $50 million. That's good for 12th in the NFL. But the big question for them is, what are they going to do with Brock Purdy? And we've talked a lot about Brock Purdy this offseason, the Brock Purdy conundrum. He's a guy that's very polarizing, especially when it comes to giving him a contract. Because we talked about in the last segment, Brock Purdy isn't a guy that's really going to raise your ceiling, but he's also, I think, in my opinion, in a tier above your Jared Goffs, your Sam Darnolds of the world. He's in a tier above your Jimmy Garoppolos of the world that are just going to have what you have, or going to do with what you hand them. He's going to do a little bit more than that, but he's not to the same level where he's going to be this guy that's going to raise you to the next tier of contention. This is a really interesting negotiation. With the salary cap increasing as much as it is, and we talked a little bit about it, I think, last week when we talked about the salary cap, the most I feel comfortable paying any player is 20%, really. 25% is fine, but 20% is generally what I would be happy with, right? In that situation, you are looking at $55 million for 20% and $69 million for 29%, for 25%, right? So you're looking at a potentiality of Brock Purdy getting $70 million. I think his contract comes out to this offseason probably closer to $65 million a year, making him the highest paid quarterback by $5 million over Dak Prescott. Now that's that's probably the max his contract gets to. In reality, it probably sits closer to 61, 62, overtaking Dak Prescott, but not really setting a massive, massive new bar. But that is a lot of money to give out. And they have a lot of pending free agents, 24 pending UFAs, including a bunch of the running backs. Jordan Mason, who's a restricted free agent, Elijah Mitchell. They're probably going to let both of them go, if I'm being honest. But a couple big pieces from the defense. Dre Greenlaw, Javon Hargrave, Talona Hufunga, Charvarius Ward, Rock Ya-Sin, Nick McLeod. These guys that have been pretty good for your depth, as well as a couple starters. You're not going to be able to sign all of them. So they need to figure out what's important, because this is a team that defense actually struggled a little bit. They weren't able to get the pressure on the quarterback. Nick Bosa has been struggling a little bit this season and that over the last couple seasons, and that has not helped them at all. So what I'm looking at in free agency for them, you need to sign your cornerback, because they don't have a lot of great corners on the market. Charvarius Ward, one of the best corners on the market right now, and there's not a lot of great corners in the draft either. At least ones that I think are worth taking with the number 11 overall pick. Charvarius Ward, I think, is a must re-sign. Dre Greenlaw is kind of the heart and soul of this team. We saw a whole issue come up when he was finally healthy. Devondre Campbell walked off, basically quit on the team because, Dre Greenlaw was finally ready to go. Dre Greenlaw, of course, got hurt coming off the sideline in the Super Bowl last season. He's a guy that I think is really important to re-sign, but he's going to command a good amount of money despite coming off of an injury. Hufunga would be good for them to re-sign, but I think they can survive without him. Outside of that, Javon Hargrave, a pretty solid defensive lineman, someone that can be pretty good in the run game and in the pass rush. They probably are going to let him walk. Injured last season, they just don't quite have the money to bring all of these guys back. So in free agency, what I'm looking at is, if you can't sign Charvarius Ward, bring in Carlton Davis. You have to bring in one of those two. Bring in some offensive line help to go opposite or either be the backup for a guy like Trent Williams. Trent Williams, who, as you saw, when he's not in the lineup, this team completely different. And look at the safety market. There's a couple safeties out there that I think would be really good for them to get. Justin Reed, Justin Simmons, a couple of these guys that are hitting free agency, be pretty good for them to go get, right? In the NFL draft, like I said, they have that number 11 overall pick. And with that number 11 overall pick, you just kind of have to take best available. This is a team I think should focus on defense more than anything. With Debo requesting a trade, maybe you can get away with a wide receiver, but I don't think they need a wide receiver in the first round really that badly. The cornerbacks that are probably going to be available for them there, top two cornerbacks on the board, Jahdae Barron and Will Johnson. Will Johnson out of Michigan, Barron out of Texas. I like both of them. If they needed a corner that bad, if they weren't able to get both Ward and Davis, grab one of them there. If not, go grab one of the many edge rushers that this class is going to have. There's a lot of great pass rushers here. James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, Mike Green out of Marshall, Mykel Williams out of Georgia are guys that I think will be available around this slot 11. But at the end all be all, if they really think that none of those guys are available, if none of the guys that they have on the board are very important, go grab an offensive tackle. Grab Kelvin Banks Jr. Shore up that offensive line is never, ever a bad idea. But I think what they should be focusing on is Barron, Johnson, Pierce, or Williams. I love Mykel Williams at pick 11 to the San Francisco 49ers. Give Nick Bosa some help off the edge so he's not getting double teamed all the time. He struggled a little bit in the last couple seasons with that. I think that's something that would be huge for this San Francisco 49ers team. The other thing that's going to be huge for them to be successful is, of course, injury luck. And that's nothing that you can really do. This seems to happen a lot to the San Francisco 49ers, where their injuries just stack up over and over and over and over again. Hopefully they can get over that, because this is a really talented team. But again, the big question for this team is going to be around their quarterback. Brock Purdy, the Mr. Relevant of his draft, is up for a contract either this offseason or next season. He will be a free agent next season. And like we learned, and like I've been saying for a long time on this show, if you want to get ahead, if you want to have a contract look like a discount, you sign them as soon as possible. Because 5 years from now, when Brock Purdy's contract runs out, $60 million is going to look like nothing. $60 million is going to look like a top 8 contract in the NFL, not a top 1 contract in the NFL. And that is what you want. That is what you want as an NFL team, to have your quarterback on discount, like the 49ers have been able to have with Brock Purdy being paid the minimum, that 7th round draft pick salary, right? The lowest paid starting quarterback in the NFL. So if they're able to work something out with him, they have the freedom to do a lot more. Overall, get Brock Purdy signed, sign Charvarius Ward, and then just get best available, because this is a team that is still a Super Bowl caliber squad, and they might show that next season. Don't sleep on the 49ers. Don't forget about them. They're still really good. They're still a sleeping giant. But let me know what you think a perfect offseason might look like for the San Francisco 49ers. What would you do with Brock Purdy? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we talk a little bit about the MLB season. Spring training is here. There is baseball going on right now. We're going to continue going over every single MLB team season preview. Today, we continue our journey around the AL West, stopping up in Seattle with the Mariners. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.